You've been working so hard at this. New photos, better bio, more swipes, more dates, more hope that this one will be different. And you're essentially exhausted. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because the system you're using was never designed to get you off of it. I'm a doctor of psychology who works with marriage-minded women. The thing I had to start telling my clients is that dating apps are not in the business of helping you find a husband. They're in the business of keeping you swiping. Once you understand how that works, everything about your dating life starts to make sense. I started noticing a pattern across my clients that I couldn't ignore. They were doing more dating and getting less clarity. More matches, more conversations, and more dates. More emotional stimulation. And then months and sometimes years later, they were no closer to a stable relationship. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why that happens, what these patterns are actually designed to do to your brain, and what changes when women finally stop playing by the app's rules. The longer my clients stayed on the app culture, the more emotionally exhausted, anxious, and confused they became without choosing a partner. I kept seeing the same patterns: constant texting being mistaken for intimacy, chemistry being mistaken for compatibility, and emotionally unavailable men thriving. Women become hyper-focused on validation and emotional intensity rather than long-term evaluation. The biggest realization came when I looked at how these apps actually reward behavior. The men getting the most tractions were not the most marriage-ready men. They were the men best at generating attention, creating emotional spikes, and maintaining multiple conversations and keeping women psychologically engaged. And this eventually burns women out, especially the ones spending the most time inside the system. That's when it clicked. All these platforms are optimized for engagement, not completion. They're designed around swiping, messaging, notifications, emotional anticipation, and repeated return behavior. Because from a business standpoint, a couple who gets married leaves. That's 2 lost subscriptions. I don't think there's a conspiracy to make people miserable, but the incentives do matter. A healthy marriage is actually a low engagement behavior. Healthy partner seeking decreases swiping, decreases dopamine loops, and increases constant checking. None of that is good for platforms' business. The apps reward speed. Marriage requires discernment. The apps reward novelty. Marriage requires stability. The app rewards emotional spikes. Healthy relationships grow through emotional safety and consistency. Those 2 systems are not optimized for the same outcome. And once you see that, you can stop blaming yourself and start challenging your approach. What the apps are doing to your brain. When a woman swipes, her brain enters anticipation mode. Maybe the next one will be the one. Anticipation itself releases dopamine. Then she gets a match, the reward spike. He messages her immediately, another spike. Then he disappears for 6 hours, and now there's some uncertainty. That uncertainty increases the psychological fixation. The brain starts seeking emotional resolution. What changed? Is he still interested? Did I do something wrong? And then he replies. Another reward spike. The brain gets trapped in this cycle of anticipation, reward, and uncertainty. And because the rewards are unpredictable, the nervous system becomes hyper-focused. That's why women ask, why can't I stop thinking about him? Part of that answer is neurological. Unpredictable rewards create a stronger attachment than predictable ones. The brain starts assigning enormous emotional significance to an interaction, even though very little compatibility has been established. And the dangerous part is the cycle continues even when she's exhausted. Because the brain keeps chasing the next payoff, the next match, the next message, the next possibility of validation. Even when she is consciously saying, I hate this app. Her nervous system is still conditioned to seek the next reward. The app stops functioning as a dating tool and starts functioning as a reward delivery system. And over time, this distorts partner selection entirely. The brain starts prioritizing emotional stimulation and uncertainty over consistency and emotional safety. There's one more layer to this that makes it even harder. The apps condition the brain to believe that there might always be someone slightly better one swipe away. The app quickly reminds her, you have new likes, new matches, new possibilities. Her brain stays in the evaluation mode instead of settling into, let me really observe this person. This keeps women emotionally restless, chronically comparing, and a brain conditioned for endless searching struggles to recognize emotional healthy consistency even when it finally shows up. That's why women often say, I haven't found the right guy yet, when sometimes the deeper issue is that the platform has trained the nervous system to stay in this permanent search mode. If this is landing for you and you really want to stop letting apps drive your dating life, I work with marriage-minded women to identify their specific patterns and build a real system for finding a compatible partner. The first step is a consultation where we'll look at exactly what's been happening and whether this program is right for you. Why the app favors the wrong men and filters out the right ones. The women looking for marriage use apps searching for reassurance, emotional certainty, connection, and eventual commitment. Her nervous system is sensitive to inconsistency, rejection, and delayed replies. When she matches with someone she likes, she tends to attach quickly. Texting frequency, emotional tone, responsiveness, all those become things that she's tracking and attaching to. The man who wants options uses apps very differently. He enjoys the novelty, emotional distance, low commitment, and interaction, and the ability to maintain connection without vulnerability. And the apps are almost perfectly designed for this. They allow for endless alternatives, controlled intimacy, and multiple connections without accountability. Here's why the mismatch becomes so powerful. She interprets his texting, chemistry, and attention as movement toward emotional security. He experiences those same interactions as stimulation and temporary engagement, with no long-term intention behind them. Her attachment grows as she seeks more clarity and consistency. He feels pressure and unconsciously pulls back. His replies get slower, his energy becomes less certain, and her nervous system activates even harder because inconsistency increases emotional fixation. The more unavailable he becomes, the more psychologically consuming the connection feels. That's why women say, "I can't stop thinking about him, even though he's given me almost nothing." The platform rewards unpredictability, intermittent attention, and novelty, which means anxious women stay hooked, chasing certainty, and avoidant men stay comfortable avoiding commitment, and both remain active on the platform. The app doesn't create these patterns, but it absolutely amplifies the behaviors that keep them locked together, and it does nothing to surface the men who are actually capable of building something real. The woman who quit the apps and met her husband. She was attractive, successful, and she genuinely wanted marriage, but she was stuck in what I call the dopamine attachment loop. Her pattern looked productive on the surface. She was matching, she was going on dates, she was redefining her profile, she remained emotionally engaged in the process, but underneath all of that, she was running on empty. Her focus had shifted without her even realizing it. She had moved from dating apps as a tool to using them as a system for emotional stimulation and validation. Every night, you check for matches, read conversations, analyze response times, wonder why certain men pulled away, chasing the emotional high of a new connection. The men she became most attracted to followed almost the same pattern every time. Charismatic, intense early pursuit, lots of texting, lots of future talk, and then emotional inconsistency. And every time one of these dynamics collapsed, she told herself the same thing: "I just haven't found the right guy yet." But the deeper issue was that the platform had trained her nervous system to equate emotional activation and unpredictability with romantic significance. The moment everything shifted was when I asked her one question. What if the strongest chemistry you feel is not your intuition, but your attachment system reacting to uncertainty? That hit pretty hard, because when we look back at the healthiest connections she had with men, they all shared one thing in common. They felt calmer. They weren't boring, not flat, but emotionally safe and less chaotic. She had been filtering those men out because they didn't create the same dopamine spike, so we changed the entire environment that she was selecting from. A 90-day break from her using apps as her primary dating ecosystem. Not because the apps are evil, but because her nervous system needed a reset. Instead of endless swiping and focusing on recurring real-world environments, mutual social groups, and attending the same events repeatedly, repeated exposure to the same people over time. What I told her was simple: stop trying to be chosen quickly and start observing people slowly. About 3 months in, she met a man through a mutual social environment connected to a local outdoor activity group. She almost overlooked him. He didn't create the overwhelming spark that she was used to. He was calm, grounded, emotionally steady, and consistent. There was no love bombing, no emotional roller coaster. Older versions of her would have called him too safe. But because we had retrained how she evaluated men, she paid attention to different things: consistency, follow-through, kindness, and how she felt around him. Not emotionally activated, but settled. She said something that stuck with me: "I don't feel anxious around him," and that became the turning point. The relationship developed slowly. Within about a year, they were engaged, and later she told me something to capture the whole transformation. For the first time in her life, she didn't confuse emotional chaos with chemistry. She didn't just meet a man, she became a different evaluator of men. And that is what made the difference. The apps are not broken. They're working exactly as what they are designed to do, and what you're trying to accomplish are not the same thing. You are not failing at dating. You are succeeding at a game that was never set up for you to win. Women who find their husband are not luckier than you. They stopped playing by the app's rules and started playing by their own rules. That shift is available to you, and that's exactly what this work is for. If this video has landed, there's one more I want you to watch before you go back to the apps. It's called Why Smart Women Keep Attracting the Wrong Men. It goes deeper into the patterns that were running long before the apps ever existed, and exactly what it takes to change them from the root. I will link it right here. I want you to go watch it, and I'll see you there.